Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Welcome to Thursday's, what? Thursday? Welcome to Thursday's edition already of the dceu Daily. Yes, Joker hits 300 million globally. 300 million globally. Right, piece of advice. When you hate a piece of media, right, and you want it to fail, stop talking about it. Stop hashtagging it. Stop saying it's a dangerous film, because you know what happens when people hear that? Ooh, must check that out. Ooh, dangerous. Ooh, violent. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, he's dancing to Gary Glitter's music. Ooh, that's a bit naughty. Better check that out. I'm intrigued. And every day, the percentage of people watching this movie, it's even starting, right? It's even starting to beat some Captain America Civil War records, which is absolutely nuts, because, look, that's just crazy. I mean, beating October records isn't that difficult, even though the box office is impressive. Even beating kind of Venom and Justice League and, Aquaman and things like that, that's one thing. But when your records are knocking on the door of Captain America, Civil War, that is just amazing. Now, before I came on to do this video, someone dropped something very, very interesting from Joe Manginelo, who was going to play Deathstroke. I think he said Deathstroke, right? So the whole thing was that they cast, because Joe Manganiello has got an interesting history within the DCEU, because he was originally going to play Superman. And when I heard this, I thought, Zack Snyder, you are nuts. How can he play Superman? I mean, he's great. I like him. He was in True Blood. He's a very talented guy. But Superman... Now, thankfully, something happened with scheduling and he couldn't do it. I love Joe Manganiello, but sorry, Zach, I don't think he's Superman. But he would have been an interesting type of Superman, very different to Henry. But Henry's Superman. That was perfect casting by Zach. But anyway, what happened instead, he was cast as the DCEU's Deathstroke. Now, of course, this was very, very exciting, because he actually had a post-credit scene with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. Now, one of the things that did excite me from the Justice Cut, and I don't know if that was always going to be within the Snyder Cut's post-credit scene, if the Snyder Cut was actually ever going to have a post-credit scene. Obviously, their mentality had changed by them to do what Marvel does. I love post-credit scenes. They're very exciting. And I think that's one of the things that Feige came out with, which was very, very, very clever. But anyway, Joe's been talking about Ben Affleck's vision for his Batman film that he was going to write and direct and star in. And this is what Joe has had to say. It is, that's true. When I met Ben, we sat down and we talked about, the role, we talked about the movie. His take is a fresh take, but I think the audience is going to be surprised because it's a road that no one's really gone down. That's completely integral to. You know who Batman is, and I think it's going to be refreshing, but at the same time completely familiar. But it's going to take this franchise in a direction that I think a lot of people are going to be really happy about. It's going to be gritty and action-packed and cerebral and all of those elements that people love about Batman. Ben's a great director, man. I mean, the last movie that man directed won Best Picture. He's got an Oscar for writing, like. This is all the components to go down as. Everything is lined up for a really, really great movie. Not only a superhero movie, but just a great, great movie. Which is why, I told him in the room, man, when I met him, I should be so lucky. I'd be in great hands to work with you. I love your movies. Let's do this. Wow, wow, wow. Now, I got that wrong. This is obviously, he was talking about this ages ago when this was actually going to happen. And this is the thing, when we all kind of were losing our shit about Ben Affleck getting cast, and we all did admit it, I stopped myself. I was about to start typing frantically, how can Ben Affleck play Batman and Bruce Wayne? This is ridiculous. And I thought, hang on, he's won an Oscar for writing and directing. This is what Christopher Nolan's trying to do here, and Zack Snyder. They're bringing in someone who can act, write, and direct. If he writes, directs, I was thinking if he writes, directs, and stars in his own Batman movie, that probably is going to be awesome. And in the end, we didn't get that because the DCEU was deconstructed and turned into something else. Now, as I said before, if Walter Hamada was here from the beginning, we could have got this. We could have got Zack's vision. The problem is, people say, well, if Walter Hamada's so great, why doesn't he just bring Zack back? Listen, how can I describe Walter Hamada to you? He's a problem solver. He came in to settle things down. So he couldn't just bring Zack back straight away because he needed to calm it down. So he comes in. There's no question Walter Hamada and James Wan worked very closely together. When Walter came in, the Aquaman movie was going to be very, very different. It was pretty much going to be Zack's vision with James directing it. This was a bit different. I think James had more of, let's say, freedom to do what he wanted when Walter came in. But I think Walter wanted to make sure it was standalone. So a lot of the stuff that Zack wanted to come in, I think there was definitely going to be some Batman in that Aquaman movie originally. And I think that Walter just said, listen, Justice League is a freaking mess. We can't really have that connectivity because we can't link to a film that's failed. We'll kind of drop something in about Steppenwolf, obviously. So basically, Walter Hamada was originally put in place, firstly, for damage control, but then to kind of set this franchise on a new path. And the new path is to have a black label, is to have the DCEU, is to have the Batman universe, a totally different universe than the DCEU or the black label. But what that actually means is that Ben Affleck is still Batman within the DCEU. It does. We now know it's obvious that Matt Reeves, the Batman, it is amazing, is in totally a different universe. It's not even the past of Batfleck, which is great, which means Batfleck can still be a thing. Now, obviously, the odds on that ever happening are very, very, very far. But at the end of the day, what I think is that at least Ben's Batman is still out there within the DCEU. When the Birds of Prey will be name-dropping Batman going missing, that's Ben Affleck's Batman. So basically, Ben can still do this if he wants to, and if Warner Brothers want to do it. What they're basically doing here, and what the idea that Walter Hamada has come up with, is to create a multiverse. So you've got the DCEU, the Batman-verse, the Black Label. Now, the Black Label thing may have been Todd Phillips' idea, but it was Walter Hamada's idea, I can tell you this now, to create multi-universes, the multiverse. That's what he wanted to do. Now, ultimately, I believe the plan, and I don't know this, no one's told me this, I think they do want to do a Crisis on Infinite Earths. I know they're doing it on the CW, but let's be honest. They're not going to be able to do that graphic novel any justice whatsoever. There's pictures of Brandon. They're doing a lot of exciting things. Tom Welling from Smallville, my favourite show of all time, is going to be involved as Clark. And that's all great. But they just don't have the budget or the talent to do this thing justice. But let's just say 5 years' time, when they set up all these universes, they do a Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think they will, ultimately. So Walter came in and decided to create different universes and for the time being, do standalone movies. And it's very interesting. So you do these universes, and each film from each universe is standalone. So you set up these universes to make sure they're strong. And I mean, look what's happened with the Joker movie. The more they trash it, the bigger it gets. Apparently, some Oscar voters saw the film and some thought it was too disturbing and it doesn't deserve to win an Oscar. Let me be clear here. You don't mark a film on its disturbing qualities. You don't mark a horror film because it's got blood in it, do you? You don't mark an R-rated movie because you feel uncomfortable within it. I watched Falling Down multiple times. It makes me feel uncomfortable, but it is commentary, very important commentary about how people are treated. Because this guy in Falling Down is an ordinary working class guy. He goes to work every day, work every day, work every day. And he doesn't get it. And in the end, that bloody phone, please ignore it. Sorry about that. I normally chuck it in my dad's room. I failed this time. Please forgive me. Anyway, right? And so, yeah, basically, Falling Down is about a working class guy, like Arthur Fleck. And in the end, the grit and the everyday kind of doldrum of life gets him down. And he notices when he goes to McDonald's that the burger isn't the same as the picture. He sees that society is pulling his plonker and he's had enough and he breaks down. And what's great about Falling Down, he hates the stuff that we do. Now, we can't go around with a gun and doing what's his name, Defense or whatever his name is. I don't think they actually gave him a name, but it's an amazing film starring Michael Douglas and Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall is one of the great actors. I really like him. But yes, so the Joker is very, very similar to Falling Down because this is about a man suffering mental health trauma from no fault of his own. I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to say this. Why don't they understand? Why is this film offending them so much? This film, right, today is mental health. It's World Mental Health Day, right? I think that's what they got because there's different mental health days. So this is World Mental Health Day, right? On World Mental Health Day, you should all go and watch The Joker if you haven't seen it already. It has an important message. But ultimately, it's a great Joker origin story. So we're getting these different universes, which is really, really exciting. And it's just great to hear Joe talking so complimentary there about what Ben Affleck had planned all those years ago. I would still love to... You see, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Ben's film was going to be called The Batman. And Matt Reeves' film is going to be called The Batman, unless they change the title. Very, very interesting what's going on there. I don't know. It's looking like it's in another universe, and I hope it stays that way. It's looking that way anyway. So, as I say, Ben Affleck's Batman is still out there. So before I go, I just want to talk about Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey could be the hiccup in the road. Birds of Prey looks like a very exciting, entertaining film. But it's made a mistake. They've made a mistake. They made a film starring... You see, Margot Robbie talks about doing an empowering film, and so does Ewan McGregor. It's kind of ironic because I think after this film, everyone's going to be saying that Ewan McGregor is the best thing about this film, because that's what I'm hearing. But what Margot Robbie has done, they come up with this idea to do a Birds of Prey film and say the emancipation of one Harley Quinn. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because we've seen in the posters, we've seen in the trailer that this is a Harley Quinn film. So why is it a Harley Quinn film? Because Harley Quinn sells, right? They could listen, and I think someone said this on YouTube. I was watching their trailer reaction, and they said, why didn't they do a separate Birds of Prey film and just do a Harley Quinn film? Basically, their idea is to have a girl gang movie about girls while they complain how bad men are, how badly they've been treated by men. You know, in the opening piece of the trailer when she goes, you know what a Harley Quinn is? It's someone who needs a master. It's useless without a master. They don't care about us, or they don't give a shit about us, or they don't give a damn about us. Of course, she's talking about men. I think this film is going to do some things. I don't think they're going to spend time putting down men constantly. But those messages are going to be there. And as I said before, to Hollywood people, representation and gender is very important. More important than hunger, more important than child molestation, more important than people starving and dying and poverty. That's where they are. They are wealthy people, and they think that these things are the most important things in the world. I think that says something about them. But I do think this is going to split audiences. So if you think the heat that Joker's getting something, you haven't seen anything yet once they home in on Birds of Prey. And I think the thing is, whatever DC movie is about to be released, it doesn't matter how good it is, these people are always going to go for it. I'm looking forward to Birds of Prey because I think it's going to be entertaining, it's going to be great, but people are going to hate on this because of the commentary it says against men. I mean, Ewan McGregor in that interview even spoke about mansplaining. I think it's hilarious because whoever come up with this idea of mansplaining that apparently we do, maybe I'm doing it now, I must be. Basically, it means whatever we say is irrelevant. It's clever, isn't it? It's clever. Whatever a man says is irrelevant. But what about womansplaining? I suppose that means whatever they say is irrelevant. But I don't treat people like that, of course. But it's all insane. We are in an insane time at the moment. But my advice to all of you is to enjoy your DC content, whether it's Arrowverse, whether it's the DCEU, whether it's the Joker movie. And just to add as well about the Joker movie, although it's been getting a lot of heat, that film has survived the heat because it's actually an amazing film. That's the thing. That's the thing about that. Now, if Birds of Prey isn't a good film, it won't be able to survive the heat it gets. My guess is that because this film stars Robbie as Harley Quinn, it's going to get through. It's going to survive whatever people think. I don't think this is going to be a bad movie, but I also don't think it's going to be great representation of the Birds of Prey, which is a shame. But I hope at least they set up the Birds of Prey for a movie of their own. And I just want to give Chris Wong Svensson a shout out again, because I was just talking to him on Twitter. He's from Ping Pong Flicks if you want to follow his YouTube channel. And he actually apparently watches my videos. And Chris, I just want to say, I discovered you at a time when all us DCEU fans needed all the friends we could get. So it's an absolute honour if you've just watched 5 seconds of the videos. It's great because you are partly my inspiration. So I want you to comment down below. What do you think about what Joe Manginelo said about Ben Affleck's The Batman? We lost out there, didn't we? We really did. We were going to have an amazing Batman film. We're still going to have an amazing Batman film. But what Sugihara did to Zack's vision and what Ben was going to do is absolutely criminal. So at least we can get the Snyder Cut, finish that portion of the DCEU off and move on. But I think it's always going to be a question of what might have been. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @MoviesTVMad, and there'll be more DCEU Daily tomorrow.